Hello Year 3. For English today we're going to have a look through the PowerPoint together all about poetry. So, share the screen. Hopefully you can all see that, lovely. So poetry, the success criteria for today's lesson. So by the end of today, hopefully you'll be able to know that there are different types of poetry, know some of the features found in a poem, and recognise these features in a poem. So there's different types of poetry. Narrative poems, poems that follow a pattern, so a haiku, a sonnet, or a limerick. Shape or concrete poetry, nonsense poetry, and acrostic poems. So a narrative poem is a poem that tells a story. Sometimes they rhyme and sometimes they don't. So not all poetry has to rhyme all the time. So here's an example. I am a fish, gooey as an inside of a pumpkin. I swim all around. I blow bubbles in the ocean. I can eat shrimp. I can jump. I am a fish. So that's just telling the story about a fish. A haiku. A haiku is a traditional Japanese poem. It consists of 3 lines. The first line has 5 syllables, the second has 7 syllables, and the third has 5 syllables as well. They're usually about nature, but not always. So if we can tap the syllables out for this one. So the sky is so blue, so that's 5 syllables. The second line, the sun is so warm up high, that's 7. And I love the summer, that's 5 again. A sonnet. A sonnet is a poem which has 14 lines, often with 3 verses of 4 lines and 2 final lines. William Shakespeare famously wrote sonnets. They are often about love, nature, or time. And here's an example of one of Shakespeare's really famous sonnets. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. So it just flows really nicely, a sonnet. A limerick. Now a limerick is a funny poem with 5 lines and a strong beat. Lines 1, 2, and 5 rhyme with each other, and lines 3 and 4 rhyme with each other. So, there was an old man with a beard who said, "It is just as I feared. 2 owls and a hen, a lark and a wren have all built a nest in my beard." So we've got beard, feared, and beard that rhyme in lines 1, 2, and 5. And then in lines 3 and 4, we've got hen and wren, and those rhyme. Those 2 words rhyme as well. A shape poem or a concrete poem is a type of poetry that describes an object and is shaped the same as the object the poem is describing. So it says, a hippopotamus's bottom is not a pretty sight, but it's better not forgotten that the bottom end don't bite. So you can see that the poem is in the shape of a hippo. Nonsense poems. So nonsense verse is poetry that is deliberately topsy-turvy and weird, and it doesn't make any sense. So here's an example by Spike Milligan called On the Ning Nang Nong. On the Ning Nang Nong, where the cows go bong and the monkeys all say boo, there's a nong nang ning where the trees go ping and the teapots jibber jabber joo. On the nong ning nang, all the mice go clang, and you just can't catch them when they do. So it's ning nang nong, cows go bong, nong nang ning, trees go ping, nong ning nang, the mice go clang. What a noisy place to be is the ning nang nong. God, that was a mouthful. You try maybe reading that one out loud. It's quite tricky. An acrostic poem. Now we've done these before at school. So it's a type of poetry where the first, last, or other letters in a line spell out one particular word. So here, this acrostic poem example is actually spelling out the word acrostic. And it says, an acrostic poem creates a challenge, random words on a theme or whole sentences that rhyme. Select your words carefully to form a word from top to bottom is the aim of this poetry style. Choose a word, then go. I can't remember what we did ours about now. Back when we were, I can't remember. Maybe you could email me and remind me. Features of a poem. So some poems rhyme, and you can make your poems rhyme if you want to. So it's where we use words with the same sound. So shush up right now, that squawky row is keeping me from sleep. So now and row rhyme, and the rhyming word needs to come at the end of the line. Alliteration, we've done this before at school. So it's when words start with the same sound or letter. You'll also find this used in advertising in newspaper headlines. So I know that we did that when we were writing about our newspaper report for Mount Kilauea erupting. We had Killer Kilauea and things like that. But the example here is the slippery snake came sliding, and you've got that s sound for the alliteration there. A simile. A simile describes something by comparing it to something else using like or as. So the snake moved like a ripple on a pond. It was as slippery as an eel. You could say that the clouds were fluffy like cotton candy, or that the sun was as bright as a spark, or as bright as fire, or something like that. Metaphors. A metaphor is a word or phrase used to describe something as if it were something else. So you could say a wave of terror washed over him. So the terror isn't actually a wave, but a wave is a good way of describing the feeling, how something can take over you sometimes. That's a little picture. Personification. So poets often give human feelings and actions to objects or ideas. So the friendly rain fell gently over the fields. You could also have a good personification would be, you could say that the wind wrestled with the trees. It's not actually wrestling, but it's just a really good way of describing it. Rhythm. So rhythm is used often in poems. So a strong, regular, repeated pattern of movement or sound. So hand on the bridge, feel the rhythm of the train. Hand on the window, feel the rhythm of the rain. So it rhymes and it just sounds really nice, a bit like a song. Onomatopoeia, now this is a good one. So it's when a word mimics the sound of the object or action that it refers to. So when you pronounce a word, it will sound like it sounds. So splash sounds a bit like a splash. Bang, moo and buzz, they're all examples of onomatopoeia. So hopefully now you know that there are different types of poetry. You know that some of the features that are found in a poem, and you can recognise these features in a poem. Now, the next slide I'm going to show you is a poem that I'd like you to learn off by heart. It's only 4 lines and it's really quite catchy. It's a bit cheeky too. It's one of my favourites and I've been teaching it in Year 3 for a long time. So the poem is, I wish I was a glowworm. So I wish I was a glowworm's never glum, 'cause how can you be grumpy when the sun shines out your bum? That's a bit cheeky, but I bet you will remember it if you learn it. I've got a spelling mistake there. It should be a glowworm's never glum. Never mind, made a mistake. Anyway, I hope that this sets you up for your poetry writing, because we're going to be learning about shape poetry this week. So I'm going to see you in another video to show you a good example of what one looks like.